Julia Tourianski is our guest for the rest of the hour. I appreciate her coming on with us. Then we have former number 4 at the NSA, top whistleblower, joining us, William Binney, for his 3rd visit with the InfoWars operation to break down the latest on what he calls a total totalitarian takeover with the NSA, with private interests that are given access to the data to corner markets and control society. We'll have open phones, and also your questions sent to Real Alex Jones will be brought up to him here on air. But first off, let's go to Julia. Julia, you did some reporting for us out at Bilderberg, did a great job over there in Copenhagen this year. So much is happening. Before we get into Bitcoin, you're traveling the world right now. Give us your take on what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, ISIS, Obama acting as a dictator, the Federal Reserve. I mean, just it's such a crazy time to be alive. And you believe things like Bitcoin are financial revolutions that could unseat the New World Order and make it as obsolete as a buggy whip when automobiles came in. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for having me. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on.
Well, I guess a point that I'd like to make is something I recently realized is that economics and technology is very far advanced, generationally more advanced than political thought. So what we have is we're playing this game within the current systems of politics, which haven't changed that much since politics existed. But the way that we are interacting with the internet revolution, with the information revolution, it's really thrown us into a completely new age. And we've left politics behind. The thought has been left behind in some ways. So this is where governments become nervous about things like Bitcoin and dark web and anonymity networks. And to me, this whole geopolitical cluster of violence, it's hopefully the only way we can battle it is through means of transcending the actual framework and not participating in it. And that's why I really support Bitcoin.
I agree with you. Elaborate on that.
So, okay, you always, and a lot of people who are quite into gold, they refer to Bitcoin as being fiat, so it's not backed by anything, right? And I just want to kind of talk about this because what's gold backed by? Well, gold has inherent value, right? That's what we say. What's inherent value? That's a very subjective thing, right?
No, I mean, I get it that technically it's encryption, it's the limited amount of it, it's that people choose to use it as a medium of exchange, that you can claim Bitcoin is not truly fiat. I'm just saying that it is competing on the fiat plane with the fiat systems of the globalist.
I don't think so at all. So let me just say why I
sure. Go ahead and elaborate.
Yeah. So the best thing about Bitcoin, which is an application on the blockchain, so I'm just talking about the money aspect of Bitcoin, right? Is it allows us to completely separate our financial interaction from the abusive systems of banking, cartels, and the state. So, we're supposed to have the separation of the church and the state. And now it's actually very plausible for us to have the separation of money and the state. Now, wow, that means that humans humans worldwide for the first time in history have the ability to be their own bank. And with anonymity applications, we have the ability to be our own Swiss bank. So that's huge.
I agree. And now our government is mega banks who want to charge us to use our own money and have bail-ins. This is the true revolution to create our own financial systems, period, regardless of whether they be gold, silver, Bitcoin, or local currencies, state currencies. The answer is diversify how we transact, whether it be barter.
Competition is good.
Yeah.
Competition is good because the best thing will win out, and it doesn't mean it'll make everything else obsolete. There's definitely always going to be a place for precious metals. There's definitely going to be a place for cash because it's the only true, fully anonymous system of exchange. But cash can be anything. Cash doesn't have to be cash. It could be seeds or tokens. It's just the interpersonal exchange. Now, that's what's beautiful about Bitcoin as well. It's peer-to-peer. It's decentralized. It's, again, empowers us on an individual basis. And another cool thing that I've been exploring lately is what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is it's a protocol, which is just language, and language is speech, and speech is protected under the First Amendment. Getting interesting, right?
Well, the Supreme Court and others and federal regulators have basically, from what I've seen, said both that it is money, but then that it's not, that it's property, or that it's like a collectible.
Yeah, they're trying to put it into their framework of control of this. That they're trying to make laws for problems that don't exist, because the state is obsessed with overreaching, almost dogmatic, religious preventative action.
Sure.
Because they want to prevent events from occurring. How egotistical is that?
And we can just circumnavigate them with using things like Bitcoin. And even if Bitcoin doesn't end up being, one of the dominant global systems, it's on the road to that thought process and the road of breaking the monopoly of the mega banks and the state governments.
It's a way out. It's a way out. And with anonymous applications to Bitcoin like this, I'm actually staying at a squat with Amir Taki, one of the leaders in the Dark Wallet project, which is a wallet that makes your transactions anonymous. So the whole there is some problems of transparency with the exchanging Bitcoin, but Dark Wallet allows a new tool to make it much more safe to exchange Bitcoin between people. So, and actually the G7 released a document listing Dark Wallet as one of the #1 concerns for money laundering. So the government, is very worried. They're very worried about these new systems and applications that they can't even comprehend because, like I said, economics and technology is superseding political thought and political structure on an exponential basis.
Now, expanding on Bitcoin, I know it's hard for you to believe because you're informed on it, but we have a lot of AM and FM affiliates and millions of listeners out there who might have heard the name Bitcoin, but it's very alien to them or Greek. Why don't you spend a few minutes about its basic history and what it is for people that don't know and where you believe it's going and some of the history of the attempts to suppress it or control it and where Bitcoin is right now? Sure.
So I like to make the comparison that Bitcoin is almost like an online gold. It's deflationary. It's, in my opinion, non-fiat. It's limited. And it's mined, which is kind of a funny thing, right? It's very similar to gold. And its history, the creator of Bitcoin is Satoshi Nakamoto, and nobody knows who he or she or they are. And this was a very, very smart move because I'm just going to say he by default, what Satoshi did was stay anonymous. And he did it because he knew he was breaking the law by even creating a competing currency to the American government, right? That's illegal. And also, I think it was very clever because if he did pronounce himself, he would be very famous, but instead he's infamous in history. And only a few people have had interaction with him, and one of these people recently died, Mr. Finney. And interestingly enough, Satoshi was libertarian. This is assumed, but there are certain things that he did that give away what I think to be is a fact. So one of the things is in the Genesis block, which is the first block hashed in the blockchain, Satoshi put in. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, good. My screen just went dark.
I know it's so rare for me to shut up, but I'm listening.
I know it is. But so what he did is in the Genesis block, he included in the code the headline of when the banks in England had their second bailout. Interesting, right? So that's he's criticizing the current banking system by including that into the very spirit of Bitcoin. So when people say it's not political, Bitcoin is incredibly political, and it's naive and silly to say that. And people who say that Bitcoin isn't political, they're being intellectually dishonest. And the mere fact that they say Bitcoin isn't political is a political statement because they want to keep it neutral, but it's not. So anyways, went off there because this is a big debate in the community. But I guess its biggest claim to fame, some of the biggest claims to fame, and when it became acknowledged by the mainstream is when it's, Silk Road. I first heard about it on Silk Road. I went on through the Tor network, I accessed this dark trading place of drugs, etc., just because I was curious. And I saw Bitcoin, and God, I wish I bought some, but I didn't. So you're already seeing this undermining of law, and law that kills people, because right now we're prosecuting Ross Ulbricht, whose mother was on your show, and she's a good friend of mine. Shout out to Lynn. You're wonderful. Keep up the good fight. We should be revering this man. We should be, and Ross Ulbricht may not be Dread Pirate Roberts, but whoever he was, whoever started Silk Road, we should be thanking him for saving lives. Because when you make exchange peer-to-peer, especially in a very violent market like the drug market, you take away the third violent party. So all that happens is voluntary people are exchanging goods and value without somebody with a gun or without, banks laundering money for all this. He's a freaking hero. Another thing that Bitcoin got famous for is when WikiLeaks was censored by PayPal and Visa and MasterCard and all of those fantastic payment systems, so that they couldn't take donations. Bitcoin stepped up, and WikiLeaks was able to continue to have funding and exist, providing a very, very important service for globally, I would say. And even your store, Alex, imagine if, I'm sure the government's not a big fan of yours. Imagine if they crack down on you and they deny payment gateways like PayPal and the credit cards.
Oh, they've already tried it before, and I've had to threaten to sue people. I've been denied to sell Obama deception on Google's shopping cart. And we're just constantly censored. It's just what they do. Because but ISIS is allowed to use Twitter and Facebook, but we get censored.
Right. But now you don't have to worry about it, because if they ever succeed in that, who cares? Because you can accept payment through Bitcoin. Like, who cares? This is what I'm talking about.
No, that's why we now accept Bitcoin the last 3 weeks or whatever at InfoWarsStore.com, because we understand that.
Yeah, so this is about, like, the fight. The age of barricades, physical barricades, is dead. We're not going to be fighting in the streets, it's just not going to happen. It's not efficient. It's violent, and it just doesn't work. Look at history. Usually physical revolutions don't turn out to provide us with much.
There are alternatives to physical revolutions, exactly. And we would rather keep it nonviolent. We will defend ourselves and have the moral high ground of being defensive, but we should aggressively pull out of the system. Farmers markets, shop local, Bitcoin, gold, silver, you name it. Stay with us. Our guest will be with us this segment and the short one after that. Then William Benny, top NSA whistleblower, joins us live. And again, you can tweet your questions at Real Alex Jones for him. And I guess the guys can grab those for me and print them off. So I'll ask 4, 5, 6 questions or more from listeners out there that tweet questions at Real Alex Jones. In fact, we'll put out some hashtag on that, or it's already been done. Some of the other news going on: F-15s escorted plane with unresponsive. Fox News Philadelphia reports F-15s escorted plane with unresponsive pilot, officials say. 2 U.S. fighter jets are escorting an unresponsive small aircraft over the Atlantic Ocean, defense officials say. The U.S. Northern Command tweeted at 12:46 p.m. today that the unresponsive aircraft took off this morning from Rochester, New York, with a flight planned to Naples, Florida. Officials from NORAD said they suspect hypoxia, or no oxygen, or deprivation of oxygen may be the possible cause. It's a TMB 700 light business and utility aircraft, so it's not one of the 11 missing planes over in the Middle East that ISIS grabbed, thanks to NATO putting them in charge of Libya. Also, NASA says an asteroid will pass very close to Earth on Sunday. Well, it's the government's job to keep us safe, so they need some TSA agents out there to grope the asteroid. NASA announced that a small asteroid will safely pass very close to Earth on September 7th. Why are they calling it small? It's 60 feet in size. If it actually hit the Earth, it would blow up a whole city, but interesting on that front. Okay, let's go back to our guest, Julia with BraveTheWorld.com, a Bitcoin activist who does a lot of interesting pro-Second Amendment reports, you name it. And she's getting into, really a revolution against tyranny by simply going around it with our choices. 20 years ago, you couldn't find organic food on store shelves. Now it's supplanting all the GMO, and they're taking corn syrup out of everything. So, and oh, corn syrup's safe. Eat it, eat it. GMO's safe. Okay, well, we're not going to eat it. And see, now we're destroying them that way. This is the answer. I agree with her. Other points that are important to make.
Well, with Bitcoin and the technology behind Bitcoin, I think the term, I wouldn't use revolution, because to me, revolution means that you're trying to change.
I agree. It's transcending. It's simply circumnavigating. Yeah.
It's transcending the system. It's leaving the system far behind in the dust while we're up here, and to the point of where we just don't really care what the state does because it becomes obsolete and irrelevant. That's where I want to take it. But I forgot to mention a fun point for your viewers, because I know a lot of people are very into gold that listen to you, regarding Satoshi, the creator of Bitcoin. His symbolic birthday is actually the day that Roosevelt passed the Executive Order 6102, which forbade the hoarding of gold. So I think maybe Satoshi's giving, the gold bugs a shout out, and the importance of having a gold-backed system.
Well, I think it's good to have a diverse system, and I haven't sold any of the gold or silver I bought 15, 16 years ago as it went up or as it went down. It's a backup. But again, diversification is the answer. And I know the elites themselves are investing heavily in new cryptocurrencies and things.
Yeah, diversify, decentralize, and disengage.
That's right. Do you think Bitcoin's going to end up supplanting the Federal Reserve System, like that Federal Reserve whistleblower said?
Again, I just think it's going to be irrelevant. If it's interesting, people say, oh, Bitcoin is anonymous, it's transparent, blah, 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 but that has its own application. So imagine if politicians started to use Bitcoin and governments and banks started to use Bitcoin. Interesting, everything's recorded on a public ledger. So the transparency is there. So it would, we could see what the politician would give us an address to send our donations to, and we would see exactly what those donations are going to.
Well, I want to hear how you think the feds or the globalists might strike back against Bitcoin. Stay with us. Third hour coming up. 5 more minutes with our guests. Then we've got William Benny joining us. InfoWars.com, PrisonPlanet.com.
Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Up on InfoWars.com, the ISIS Bucket Obama Challenge. And we have another video. Man dressed as ISIS jihadi crosses borders, simulates beheading in a major city. Just to illustrate, the border's wide open. But then they've got the TSA groping everybody. The war on terror is a hoax and a fraud. This is meant to expose the hoax, not bolster it. I'm like the progenitor of exposing the war on terror as a hoax day one, not bragging the granddaddy of it. So fools out there going, hey, Al-Qaeda works for the globalists. Yeah, I know, but it's like turning starving pit bulls loose on a bloody child. Just because you run the dogs doesn't mean they're not real. Trying to explain that. It's a globalist destabilization force, so people can't live on their own, so they beg for centralized government. Problem, reaction, solution. They try to create anarchy, so you beg for the state, instead of letting natural anarchy through free association grow. Now, Julia, other points that are important to make here. How do you see them striking back, and how do you see Bitcoin making the old system obsolete? Because some could argue that they know the old system's going down, SDR is going to be fiat, that they actually might be behind Bitcoin because they want it to be the new system.
Yeah, I just don't buy it because, you know, it's incredibly difficult. You can't control it. You can't really, it's difficult to censor. And just like imagine doing an audit on Bitcoin. It's very, very difficult, much more difficult than the systems we have in place right now. What they would like is just a pure cashless society where we use credit cards for everything and government issued cards. Bitcoin is outside of that system. So I don't think it's favorable for that kind of, I don't think it fits into that conspiracy theory at all. But regarding the regulation,
I agree with you. I don't think they're behind it. And the fact that its first message was against the banker bailout when it showed up 4 or 5 years ago, I think it's some type of super smart insider who's protesting the whole system.
Yeah, it's, I mean, to say that it's the government conspiracy, I think it's giving governments way too much credibility. I just don't believe it. I think it's an individual or small group of individuals that are innovative and have had freedom in their intention. And so, but let's talk about deregulation, because this is a big deal right now. The New York State Department of Financial Services and Superintendent Ben Losky, they've proposed a bit license for the state of New York. And it's incredibly overreaching and it stifles innovation. And I like to call it the ban on human interaction, because it defines cryptocurrency very broadly, and it states things like all the companies have to have fingerprints of all of their employees, background checks of people who are using their services. You have to be like, your information has to be submitted if you make a transaction that's more than $3,000. It's really insane. And all the companies are actually leaving the state because they can't afford, you have to hire like 3 different regulation officers, compliance officers. So little companies are actually going to be destroyed if they do choose to stay in New York. And this is what happened in England with the automobile regulations. Guess what? America won the automobile race easily because they were so heavily regulated that nobody could do anything. And it's so overreaching that now if anybody wants to transact with a company that is located in New York, they have to fall under those regulations too. So companies are going to have to deny, companies outside of New York are going to actually deny customers that live in New York.
And then people will flee California and New York, come to Texas and act just the same way and ruin it again, not smart enough to know that they shouldn't crap in their own house.
Exactly, Alex. And I have a good friend who's been in the headlines in the Bitcoin community quite a bit, and he had a business, and he's going to be moving to Austin, most likely.
Awesome. Well, we got to get you in studio. Julia Tourianski, thank you so much for spending time with us. The website is bravetheworld.com. Julia Tourianski.
At Brave the World.
All right, absolutely. bravetheworld.com. Thank you so much. All right.